This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hello there and happy Thursday. Welcome to episode 104 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. I am so happy to be back with you. The last episode I published was back in March 2018 as of this recording, and it's August. It is August. I took a couple of month break. It started out unintentional and then it kind of just felt right. So I continued it, but I'm back and I'm so excited. I cannot wait for you guys to listen to the new She Creates Business and to see everything that I have in store for you over the next couple of months. So I want to let you know that I am airing episodes that I actually recorded back in the spring. I just never published them because, as I mentioned, I went on the break. And so a couple of these episodes are a little bit dated. Like, for instance, when I recorded these episodes, you'll actually hear, I recorded them all together. So you'll actually hear quite a few mentions of when Style Me Pretty was about to go off the blogosphere. It's back, so that didn't happen. But anyway, so you'll hear references to that, et cetera, et cetera. But I want you to know that beginning in a couple of weeks as I record this, it is actually Thursday, August 9th. So in a couple of weeks, we'll get to brand new guests and brand new content. But I'm airing these episodes because they're new to you, so you won't really know the difference aside from the kind of dated references that we make. So I want to tell you guys a couple of things about the show that are going to be new that you won't have heard, that you haven't heard before. So once we get into the new episodes, we'll start hearing more about that. But I'm going to start asking number one, the shows are going to be almost an hour instead of only 30 minutes. We're really going to deep dive into these topics that I'm bringing to the show. And so instead of doing like 30-minute, 20-minute episodes that are kind of quick and maybe we don't get as far into topics as you wanted us to, that's not going to be an issue anymore. The shows are actually going to be an hour. The second thing that I'm super excited about is I wanted to add something kind of unique and fun. And I love when people get asked personal questions on podcasts, but I don't like it to take up space in the content. And that's just a personal opinion of mine. And because it's my show, that's how I'm going to do it. But I still want to know more about people because that's what this show is. It's an interview show. And so what I've decided to do is at the end of every episode, after we've covered all of the content that is specific to the reason I brought the guest on, we are going to ask every single guest 3 random questions from my table topics cube right here on my desk. If you haven't heard of Table Topics, look it up on Amazon. They have a bunch of different varieties. This is like the original variety, and it's exactly as it sounds. It is a cube of, I don't even know how many, 100, maybe more, 100 cards. And every card has a random question on it. And so I've chosen this Table Topics cube. I randomly pull the cards. I don't look at them beforehand. The guest doesn't know what the questions are going to be. And they just answer the questions. It's going to be super fun. And so after today's episode, because I recorded this back in the spring, I'm going to answer 3 questions for you from Table Topics. And we'll just do that as we go through all of these older episodes that I recorded back in the spring. And then once I have all of the new episodes airing, I'll actually be asking these table topic questions to the guests. So I'm super excited about that. A couple of other things. You guys, this podcast is brought to you by you. Without you listening, without you sticking with me through this break, without your DM saying, hey, when is the show coming back? It wouldn't be a podcast. It would literally just be an audio file on iTunes and no one would care. So thank you so much for listening and for allowing me to produce this show. Now, financially, as you know, podcasts cost money to produce, just like all of our businesses. Financially, it is brought to you by the Opt-in Shop, which is my shop of done-for-you lead magnets made specifically for wedding professionals. If you are interested in taking a peek at those, you can find them over at shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com. So thank you to everyone who has supported the show in that way. And thank you for everyone who has supported the show always as a listener. Appreciate you guys. So today my guest is Brittany Finkle from Happily Ever Borrowed, and I am absolutely thrilled to bring you this interview. It was a riot to record. I first, and you'll hear this story on the podcast, but I knew about her business, of course, because I'm in the industry, but I heard her interviewed on another podcast called Shopify Masters, and I wanted to talk to her personally immediately. She's so smart. She's so brilliant. This business is so cool. And I was just in awe of everything that she does, pretty much by herself. It's crazy. You're going to hear her story. Let me tell you a little bit about her professionally here. She's the founder of Happily Ever Borrowed. She always drawing and designing. She graduated from Cornell University with a degree in fiber science and apparel design. She was lucky enough to work in planning, merchandising, and buying for top luxury companies such as Ralph Lauren, Saks Fifth Avenue, Hermes, or I don't know how to say that, but I think that's how you say it, you guys. And most recently, Chanel. She launched Happily Ever Borrowed in 2012 to help women rent their bridal accessories for their wedding day. She continues to juggle her life in the luxury fashion industry with helping brides find their dream accessories every day. It is absolutely my pleasure to bring this interview to you from Brittany Finkle. If you guys want to find her, she shares her all of her websites and social sites at the end of the interview, and you can find her everywhere at Happily Ever Borrowed. So without further ado, let's go to the show. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I am ecstatic to have you. We were chatting offline, so I just thought I would share this with everybody. You guys, I knew what Happily Ever Borrowed was. And then I heard Brittany on this other podcast I listened to. I don't know why I listened to this show. I think I just have like this weird curiosity. It's not like I even use Shopify, but I listened to this great podcast called Shopify Masters. And Brittany was on there with this brilliant interview about her business. And I don't know, like luckily I know Megan Ely, who is also on the show, and just kind of saw her post something about Brittany on her own Instagram and stalked Megan, and I felt not really that bad about it because I was excited. So anyway, that's the backstory, and I'm so thrilled we could make this work, and I appreciate you taking the time here today.
Me too. And it makes me even happier that you said you knew about Happily Ever Borrowed before you had heard the podcast. So that's great that the word is spreading.
I did. And I was trying to think how I even knew about it. You know, it's probably just one of those things where you are in the industry and you're researching, you know, especially as a vendor and a podcaster, you're researching, you know, resources and just cool things happening. And I really can't even pinpoint it. And then, you know, what's funny is, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel that sometimes when I see these, you know, amazing companies like Happily Ever Borrowed, it just seems so big, you know, it really does.
Well, you know what? Perception is reality, my friend. So I love hearing that.
And it did. I was just like, gosh, this is the coolest. Like, it seems so huge, and it is. And I just never thought in a million years I could have you on the show. And so anyway, so that was my perception. Yeah. Awesome. Anyway, all right. So, you know, Brittany, I read that professional bio there at the top of the hour, and everybody kind of has just a little peek into what you're doing over there at Happily Ever Borrowed. But I would love for you just to take a minute in your own words and tell us kind of who you are in the industry and your role at Happily Ever Borrowed and all the things.
Sure. So my name is Brittany Finkle, and I started Happily Ever Borrowed almost 7 years ago now, which is absolutely crazy to me. And what we do is we rent bridal accessories to brides for their wedding day. So everything from, you know, tiaras and jewelry and veils and sashes and everything except the dress. And the idea really came from when my sisters were getting married. They kind of spent their whole budget on the dress and then realized that, oh my God, the veil could cost another $1,000 and the sash is another $600. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think about jewelry. And after they went through that whole process and realized that they could spend almost as much as they spent on the dress on their accessories, I thought there must be a better way. And at the time, I was actually in design school at Cornell University with my good friend Haley Page, who I'm sure you've heard of at this point. She's a little popular these days.
Just a random person named Haley Page.
But she and I, we went to the same design school together, and when we graduated, we both kind of did our own things in the fashion world, and at some point we ended up getting cocktails, and actually it was to commiserate about breakups, and over those drinks, we started talking about this idea, and she's like, we should totally do it. So the two of us actually started Happily Ever Borrowed together, And right around that time is when JLM called Haley to start her own line. And obviously that was, her biggest dream and goal. So she started JLM. I kept going with Happily Ever Borrowed. And 7 years later, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
You started 7 years ago. It was 2011. And although, Amazon, of course, existed, like Facebook existed, all the things existed, right? But I feel like even 7 years ago, e-commerce is not what it is today. Do you feel that way?
Totally. And when I look back even at kind of the marketing abilities we had back then versus now, the difference is just huge. I mean, even when I think about it, like Pinterest didn't exist, Instagram didn't exist. All we had is Facebook and Twitter, and, basically our only resources for weddings was at the time, blogs kind of were just starting. Like Style Me Pretty was still the thing back then, but it was like the only thing. And then the Knot and Wedding Wire, and like that was it. So we have come a long, long way in 7 years, and things have changed just in such a dramatic way.
Oh my gosh, the change is so drastic. I know you just mentioned some of these tools. Can we dig into what you were doing? Like, for instance, let's talk about what you were doing, I don't know, on Facebook.
Yeah.
For Happily Ever Borrowed at that time.
I mean, this is so funny going down like memory lane, but I think, I don't even know if like business pages existed.
Honestly, I don't think they did. I should have looked it up, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's been a while. But I would say that actually I remember being very active on Twitter to talk with professionals a lot in the wedding industry. So it was a way to really connect with different wedding professionals and kind of start a dialogue there about what we were doing and how we could work together in different capacities. So I do remember actually using Twitter a lot, funnily enough. I would say we don't really use it at all these days, maybe to like blast out some news, but I don't use it in that same way, even though it would be great to still kind of do that. And I would say once we started Facebook up, now obviously I look back and see all the great communities that everyone has, but we did not create a community on Facebook at all. It was more of a place to just kind of show our pieces and do a little bit of news and content. But I would say we really didn't start ramping up with social media and really taking a deeper dive into that until the last year, when we really realized it was something we needed to do. And I can say that the one thing that, we hear all the time from different business podcasts and professionals is to start your email list early. And that was one thing that I had. So I can say I had the email list for a long time. But I think what's really interesting with brides is that, where it's continually evolving, and every single year there's a new crop of brides that are interested in the content. And, it's a little bit harder for us to kind of continue, even though I had so many people on my mailing list. And of course, all of those people could share that with their friends who were engaged. They weren't all actively in that mindset. So I think it was really important that we kept cultivating and also kept growing that list over time and changing who the really active participants are in our mailing list, because obviously we have a short window to really capture people and convert on those customers.
Yes. And you have a really cool way of getting people on your email list. And I want to talk about that in just a second. But I want to back up just a little bit. And when you were, so Twitter is interesting. When I hear people using Twitter, it's very much the same. It's connecting with other professionals in that industry, whether it be writers or journalists or, in our case, wedding professionals. It's never our actual clients.
Yeah.
And it's funny how we kind of evolve in and out of social media platforms. You were using Twitter, 6-7 years ago, but now it's not really a huge focus for you. And I think that's encouraging to hear, because sometimes it feels like in our businesses, we can get so married to a platform, and it's like, oh, if I don't do good on this platform, then I'm sunk. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. I mean, as everything changes, I kind of laugh about this now, but we know, like, in the past few weeks, like, because Kylie Jenner said Snapchat is dead,
yes,
like their stock dropped and it's over and nobody uses it anymore. And like a year ago, everyone was ramping up and saying, oh my gosh, you need to get on Snapchat. You need to think about this more. Then Instagram stories happened and then it becomes obsolete. So, it's a really amazing roller coaster of technology that we're on right now. And I would say that, everything is changing so rapidly that, to get connected or too invested in any one thing is really kind of a detriment because you don't know kind of how long it's going to really last.
I couldn't agree more. We have to be kind of super nimble, which we can be as entrepreneurs. Yes. And I think that's one of our huge benefits. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about is I know you've been published in magazines and in print. How did that come to be? And how did you see that impacted you as a business in the e-commerce space?
Well, I think that was one of the major things that I was really focused on back when I had started because again, there wasn't a huge social influence. So a lot of the ways that brides were really getting their information, and again, this was pre-Pinterest also, was through bridal magazines. It was still the same thing where you got engaged and you finally had the excuse to buy a bunch of bridal magazines and flip through all the pages and get all this information. So it was a really great way for brides to connect. And so I would say that the way that we really got into those is twofold. A lot of the industry does revolve around advertising. So it's not always easy to connect with the editorial people without kind of going through the advertising realm first. So here and there, we did pay for some print ads, but it is really hard to see a return on investment with those unless you're putting a specific, coupon code or something like that where you can really track that metric, which we had done. But honestly, we did not see a lot of traffic from that. And one in particular I can think of is New York Weddings Magazine, where we got a ton of hits from, and still to this day, get so much traffic from their website where we're listed. But that started kind of in a print way where we first kind of did an advertisement with them. Then actually someone's wedding was featured in there where they used us, and it was talking about their $10,000 wedding and how they did it on a budget. And we were in there, and then someone did an article just on different ways that you could rent for your wedding, and they listed us in there. But really where we saw the huge traffic drivers come from that was when they featured those pieces online, and not necessarily when the paper hit the newsstand. So it's interesting because I think it's important as far as getting your name out there and kind of getting the industry plus consumers and customers to really understand who you are, or kind of see your name in the wild per se. Right. But at the end of the day, what really for an e-com site drives the traffic is that online traffic, and it's easily trackable, and you can kind of see where conversions come from that. And it's an easier way to really see that lift.
I feel like I kind of jumped ahead as far as like the marketing, but I want to keep going here because I feel like we're on a roll here, and then we'll get back into the mechanics of what it means to start an e-commerce site. I just got too excited, I think. I was like, all the things. How much can we talk about in 30 minutes? Okay, so I kind of teased it already, but you have this sweet way of getting people on your email list, and it's through a quiz. And I would love for you to tell us about that because it's just so awesome.
Absolutely. I think actually it's funny you mentioned that you heard me on the Shopify podcast, because I think that actually the way I heard about kind of or conceptualized the idea of doing this quiz was through another Shopify podcast. They weren't doing it in the same way at all, but they had just talked about, kind of doing quizzes to get customer insights. And I just decided to do that kind of same thing. And funny. Really, at the time, what I was thinking was I was looking at all of our inventory and seeing the pieces that have rented over and over again versus the pieces that have never rented once. And I was trying to figure out, as a buyer, and my background is in luxury fashion, so I've been doing this for a long time, but, how to figure out really what customers want. And it was around the time when like the boho / rustic wedding was all of the rage. And rose gold was like making a crazy comeback. And I was trying to figure out, how to figure out what brides really want in their wedding day. So I decided to make this style quiz that would kind of lead brides through a series of questions using images and figure out what their bridal style was, whether it be that boho rustic or classic or glam or modern. Or at the end of the day, eclectic, if there was so many different things that she was picking. And it was intentionally, at the beginning, supposed to be for me to make better buying decisions, to see where brides were kind of falling into those buckets and then help find and buy accessories in that way. But really it evolved into capturing all of these email lists and then being able to segment and drive to those customers specific content for them based around what bridal style they ended up having. And we just wanted to make it easier for the customer to really find what she was looking for, because maybe she doesn't want to just shop by veil. Maybe she has no idea what kind of accessories she wants, but she knows that she's having a beach wedding and that she wants, to look a certain way, but doesn't know exactly what pieces she wants for that. So now on our site, we have also the ability to search kind of by bridal style, and you could take our quiz first, or you can just kind of browse the styles that we have there, and they can explore the accessories in that way. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, once they're on our emailing list, we send them kind of personalized style advice throughout the months based on different pieces that we think are perfect for them, or different content that we think might fit kind of their bridal style, and just reminding them of all the different ways that we kind of went through that journey together. So it's been a really great way to, get email lists, but also create special experiences for each bride, because we are e-commerce, it's not easy to do that. So we like to try to speak to everyone in as personal of a way as possible.
Yes. And finding, your personal style is so intimate. And so when you see those results after you have personally gone through and picked all of these answers, I think there's such a special feeling about it. I mean, obviously BuzzFeed, right? Like they get it. We all want to know more about ourselves.
Exactly.
That's so cool. So how are you, first of all, what email system do you use?
I use MailChimp.
You use MailChimp. And I hear you're using segmentation, which is great.
Yes.
And do you feel like, let me ask you this. How do you, getting traffic to the quiz is kind of the main thing, right? Without anyone knowing it exists, it's not really growing. So what do you find are your best strategies for driving traffic to your quiz?
Yes. So that is where our friend Pinterest comes in.
Oh.
So we have a ongoing Pinterest ad that encourages brides to find their bridal style. And that is pretty much 100% of how we are getting those customers to find us.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So we've tested a little bit on Facebook. We've done some more Facebook ads recently, but it was really more strictly for conversion and not necessarily through the quiz. So we tried it a couple different ways and did some A/B testing on whether we had them go through the quiz first and then see how long it kind of took them on the journey, or if we kind of cut the quiz out and went straight more towards what we do and hoping for conversion. And what we found is that for Facebook, that works better. And for Pinterest, it works better because people are more in that exploratory phase. So when they're looking and pinning and finding different things, Pinterest is a search engine. So they're really searching. So when we did this Pinterest ad, that was just, find your bridal style, and we put different ads to test. That's really where we've been seeing the best results and getting the most people.
So are you pretty much focusing almost all of your marketing efforts here, or do you feel like it's an even split between, Pinterest in this quiz, Instagram, Facebook, etc.?
We've really been testing a lot of different things, I would say, since probably like December. And, as I'm so glad that you said, we're huge. And sometimes it feels that way, and sometimes we feel very small. So marketing budget is, something that I try to keep, in certain months pretty consistent, and there's just test different things differently. So the style quiz, as far as Pinterest, has been up and running for a long time, and we've kept that Pinterest ad running because it really does help drive a lot of brides to us. But for Facebook, we've kind of tested doing that exclusively and then Pinterest exclusively, and now we're at the marriage of both. We found what works for Facebook and we found what works for Pinterest, but from a dollars perspective, Facebook and Instagram is always more expensive. So I would say from a budgeting perspective, probably 75% goes towards Facebook and Instagram and 25% towards Pinterest. But when I look at what drives the most traffic, it's Pinterest. But where we see the most conversions is Facebook and Instagram.
Interesting. But it all works, holistically together, and it's all important.
It does. Yeah. And I think, there's certain things that you can't really see as well. I mean, for me, someone who's kind of looking on Pinterest is probably someone who might maybe isn't engaged yet or is hoping to be engaged soon. She might have just gotten engaged and is starting to kind of pin all of her ideas together. Yes. So they're in the beginning of their planning journey, and that's why they're finding their bridal style. And they may not convert in the, I think, 60-day max window that Pinterest allows you to tie their pixel to the order. Whereas with Facebook, if they're getting an ad driven to them, and actually we've looked at kind of, you can even segment it when you're doing your ads into engaged within the last 3 months, 6 months, or a year. So if I can keep it in that range and really drive it towards people who want to convert, and most of our brides are converting within usually the 3 to 6 months before their wedding range. So we try to keep it, and people who have just been engaged but have been engaged probably around a year, then that's kind of why we see that quicker conversion, but also it costs more money. So you need both, and it's about visibility, which is I think what Pinterest is more for. But then as far as really driving the sales, that's where Facebook comes in.
How do you feel about, we chatted earlier about 7 years ago, there was maybe not less marketing opportunity, but different. What has it been like for you to just kind of organically grow through all of these different marketing opportunities? Does it feel less overwhelming now or more overwhelming, or what has that been like for you personally as a business owner?
Overwhelming is a good word. I think again, things change so quickly and have been just ramping up so quickly year after year. I feel like things are just evolving over time. I wouldn't say it's more overwhelming, and I think it just always takes time for people to figure out what works for them. And then it is frustrating when then suddenly it changes and the platform that you've worked so hard on is no longer the thing anymore, and you have to start all over again. I think, as you mentioned earlier, it's just about being agile and nimble and figuring out what works for your client. And, for us, I'm so just focused on the customer experience, and that is the most important thing to me. So at the end of the day, I'm constantly thinking about marketing and trying to make it work, but I want to serve our bride first, and I want to make sure that she gets her pieces on time and she gets the attention she needs and the styling advice that she needs. So at the end of the day, as long as people are finding us and we're answering their questions and helping them find what they need, that's my end goal, and that's what we are focused on at all times. So even though marketing changes all around us, at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that that customer is happy, and that's where perfecting the experience for her is really the most important.
Brilliant. I love that so much because it's the one constant, right?
Exactly.
So smart. Okay. Well, we've talked, let's get into really the mechanics of having an e-commerce business. There's so many moving parts, inventory, shipping. I have 100 questions about this. So tell us.
I've been through it all.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, me too. Tell us how you, first of all, source all of these beautiful pieces.
Yes. So we work directly with the designers.
Cool. Okay.
And we buy at a wholesale cost, just like any brick and mortar business bridal boutique would. So the difference is, instead of, charging a retail price and making the difference on that, we rent it for about 20 to 30% of the retail price. And that's how we work. So we choose not to rebuy from brides because we wanted to make sure that our designers are kind of in on the loop and the experience, and that they're comfortable with the idea of us renting their pieces. Mm-hmm. So that has always been this way from the beginning because we really wanted to have them on board and understand their needs as well. So while many brides are very happy to buy their accessories, a lot of brides just simply can't afford to have these luxury high-end pieces. And, what we've explained to our designers and also to brick and mortar businesses as well is, we're not competing with you on the brides who have no issue buying these pieces. And most brides, if you say, this veil is $1,200, they're not going to just say, oh, well, okay, I'll just spend the $1,200. Like, most likely they're going to go for something cheaper, right, or they're going to try to find it secondhand or try to find it on sale somewhere. And then they're not going to have your piece at all. So the way that we work with our designers is to give access to brides who wouldn't otherwise have purchased the veil anyway. Yeah. And instead of having them kind of go down the road of getting something that could have been made sloppily or of not of high quality, and we've seen all of those disaster bridal stories when they look at the picture online and then buy it and they get something completely different, yes. which is just heartbreaking. That's why we really want to just give access to those brides who otherwise wouldn't pay that or otherwise don't value that price point. I think that's what's so brilliant, having worked in the luxury fashion industry for so long, handbags and shoes and things like that, you can kind of somewhat justify the price in the sense that you can wear it over and over and over again, and the quality is going to last forever, and that you are going to get your cost per wear down of these items. But when it's for a wedding and it's for 15 minutes, sometimes when it's just your ceremony that you're wearing this veil for, a lot of brides just don't value the ownership of that item. But they still want to look beautiful, and they still want to look and feel high end and have a quality piece. So that's kind of why we decided to work directly with these designers and make sure that the pieces are always up to date, always in style, always the best quality, and that they're comfortable with the concept.
How do you price? You mentioned that they are like 20 to 30% of retail price. When you're looking at sourcing those pieces, do you say, okay, it'll take me, 2 to 3 rents or 1 rent or whatever to return this or get back my money on this price?
Definitely. I think that was, the kind of the secret sauce of me figuring out over time, because there is a threshold of how expensive something can be, and how high I can rent it for, and how many times before, either it doesn't look the same way anymore, or, for example, a super expensive veil. If we feel like we can only get 3 rentals out of it because it's super delicate, and obviously with shipping back and forth and brides wearing it, there's obviously wear and tear over time. If it's super expensive and I would have to get, 5 to 6 to 7 rentals out of it to break even, it's not worth it for us because it's too expensive and the bride doesn't want to pay that much money. And then it just doesn't work out. So we really had to think about over time, and we figured this out as we have, more and more brides and find those sweet spot of price points that work for us. But for us, the goal is always to break even at 2 rentals. Okay. So most of our pieces can last past that, usually much more past that, which is great. And that's kind of our goal. And that's why we try to keep the prices as low as possible, so that we can do that and then make sure that our brides are still enjoying the piece for many rentals after that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you keep all this stuff?
That's amazing. So, I can give you the backstory of when I started this. It was in a studio apartment in New York.
Oh my gosh.
And so very small living quarters, and dated many guys who came into my apartment to see lots of different bridal accessories all over the place and bridal magazines. And I probably looked like a psycho. So there was always like a dinner conversation prior to that to explain what I do.
It's just Brittany and her tiaras. It's fine.
Just me hanging out in tulle and tiaras, just by myself in my studio. But when my husband and I met, we moved in together before we were married, but still was kind of working out of the apartment. And then recently we moved into a bigger place. So now we have a nice home office where everything is housed, which very happy because we have plenty of space and a whole room for happily ever borrowed. It's still existing out of Brooklyn, New York.
Does that just feel amazing? Like
yes.
You're not. So you're storing and shipping from your home office though.
Still from home office.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Do you pack everything?
I do.
Hey, how are you doing all of this?
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'm still working full time as well. So it's there are some days of lack of sleep, but honestly, we're at a point now where, I mean, we probably have 10 to 20 orders per week, and I mean, there's a schedule, right? Like most brides are renting for the weekend. So if their wedding is over the weekend, we want it to arrive to them on Thursday, then everything is being shipped out Monday and Tuesday. And then, they're receiving it for the weekend. I receive everything back and repack and get everything out. And, on Sunday is kind of where I'm packing all the orders for the next week to go ahead. So there's kind of a cyclical cycle now that I can say it's a little more calm. Once bridal season picks up, it gets a little intense with the post office.
I was going to say.
And making sure that things get back on time. But I mean, that's something else that we've perfected over the years with making sure that on the rental calendar there's enough buffer time in between the rentals to allow for any shipping mishaps or late returns, so that we're not upsetting anyone in the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I heard this, you kind of mentioned it just a second ago, but I remember this from the Shopify Masters episode that you did, was that the job, and I don't know if you still have the same job or what have you, but it's funny because the busy time in the wedding industry is kind of the non-busy time, I guess, in your day job, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I work for a French luxury brand. So European brands notoriously kind of take the summer off a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah, I wish I had that same schedule.
Yeah, they know what's up.
Exactly, they do. So August is pretty dead, and July and June are a little bit busy leading up to that. But for us, when we have bridal season, I mean, now it seems to be getting longer and longer. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh my gosh.
But we get busy. We start getting busy, I would say, even in March, and then all the way through November even now. So I feel like we really only have a couple of winter months where I'm somewhat off. But what I'm saying with the actual weddings, I would say we're busiest between still May and September. Mm-hmm. And because over the summer, my full-time job, it's a little less busy. It's actually a good time for me to make sure that I'm getting all those orders out. But also, I would say while that all of that those operational things keep me very busy and stressed because making sure that brides get everything on time. The strategy work is really what happens kind of in the winter and leading into engagement season, when we're really trying to make sure that brides know about us before they are planning, their bridal attire and before their wedding. So I would say I feel busier in this time frame because we're really pushing on marketing and trying to capture as many people before the busy wedding season starts.
Yes. And because they kind of have, you mentioned earlier, they have that it is a busier time because you're really like digging into that 3 to 6 month before their wedding time period where they're coming to you and like getting their stuff set up.
Yes. And what we do also is we have what we call our send before you spend box, mm-hmm. where brides can try any 3 pieces on our site for $50 for like their hair trial or their dress fitting. And then when they return that to us, they get $25 towards their wedding day rental. So usually I would say dress trials and hair trials are around probably 3 months before their wedding. Mm-hmm. So that's why even I think March through May is still pretty busy for us, because that's a lot of the time when brides are figuring out what accessories they want. So we have a lot of send before you spend boxes in that time frame. And then it's their actual wedding kind of come to the summer and fall months.
I really like that. It's like Warby Parker.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's it's another thing about e-commerce is it's difficult to kind of envision what you want, and we're realistic in knowing that brides want to see things before they try them. It's way too much risk just going into your wedding weekend to be like, I'm going to just see how this turns out and hope it arrives on time.
Yes, I'll just grab this barrette. It'll be fine.
Exactly. Most brides are not that way. And actually something we started doing this winter is we started partnering with a lot of different hairstylists to actually just educate them on what we do and about the send before you spend box, because we found that a pain point in, hairstylists and their industry is that when brides come to them for their hair trials, usually they have a couple of pictures pinned of what they want, but they don't have hair pieces, or they don't know what they want, or if their hairstylist is just saying, well, just buy a couple of things on Etsy and bring them and we'll see what works. But then it's a waste of money, and these brides have bought a whole bunch of things that then they'll never wear. So hairstylists were super excited to find out about us, because they had a resource to give brides to say, okay, here's this company. Before your hair trial, you're just going to rent your 3 pieces. You're going to bring them. We're going to see which one works in the hairstyle that you're doing. And then we know for the day of what we're doing. And and it just kind of helps everyone along the way in just their planning process and knowing what they want. So we were really excited to kind of start that partnership program up too, because I think it's all about just finding the pain points and what helps people from different angles, and it helps the brides, it helps the hairstylists, it helps us, so it makes everyone happy.
It does, and it's back to your core mission, which is making the client experience amazing. And who doesn't want like a full-on test run to see their veil in their hair or their hairpiece or whatever it is? It's just such a good feeling as a bride.
Absolutely. I mean, you need kind of that assurance. And it's funny because for my own wedding day, I'm very lucky that I'm surrounded by bridal accessories all the time. So for me, I did really just grab a couple things out of the closet and bring it up to Lake George when I was getting married and say, we'll see what works when I get there. But not everyone has that luxury. And of course, we don't expect people to go out and just buy a couple of things and see what works. So I really want brides to be able to have that experience and feel secure that they know what they're getting, and they're able to try different things without wasting money.
Yeah. Oh, so good. What advice would you give to someone who, maybe just one or two pieces of advice that you'd give to somebody who is thinking of getting into e-commerce in one way or another, especially in the wedding industry?
I think try still to make it as personal as possible. And be there for your customer. I mean, I'm such an e-commerce client in general, so I rarely, if ever, step foot into a store, and I live and die by Amazon Prime. So I am like the total e-commerce client. But I mean, I love a live chat, and I love when people respond to my emails within 24 hours or less. And I really want to be sure that even though I'm having an online experience and I'm trying to see as much as possible, if I have a question, I want to be able to get it answered really quickly. And that's just me as a regular consumer and not as a bride. And you can assume that brides want it even faster because they're planning and they're going and they're trying to figure things out. So the number one thing I could say is to just be there to answer your clients' questions, but then also to use that experience and those questions to figure out what your site is missing. And I think we've learned so much from just hearing the questions that our brides have. And, it still boggles my mind on how many calls I get per day of people saying, can I sell my dress to you? And I say, we don't do dresses. And I'm not sure how that's still not clear on the site. But if I'm still getting the question, then there's a problem with my site. So I need to continue to figure out what that is and how I can make that come across so that brides know that we don't do dresses, we don't rent dresses, and we don't buy from customers. But, there are so many things that I've learned from hearing these questions from brides over and over again that have made me realize, okay, I need to fix that on the site. Or, we just implemented something on the site where they can actually ask questions on each product page, kind of like an Amazon has, where there's question and answer section as well as reviews. So now brides can just type in their question right away and we can answer it as quickly as possible. And they don't have to leave the page and go look for our email address to go find us. Again, it's about making the experience, again, as seamless as possible and answering any questions they have as quickly as possible. And I think that's really what makes you have that personal connection, even with being online.
I love that. Personal connection.
It's necessary.
It is. It so is. In my own day job, I work for Acuity Scheduling, and it's kind of the same thing. We don't offer, phone support, but we do email support. And so one of the biggest things, Gavin, the founder, is like, okay, how can we be like fast, accurate, and human? That's our thing, right? And it's quick, we're being correct, but also being like, there's another person on the other side of the screen. We get you. You're important to us. You're not just an order. And it's, it takes effort to communicate that to just, like you said, regular online consumers, not people planning, quote, the biggest day of their life.
Exactly. Yes. And I mean, and again, I'm one of those people who don't even obviously we're having a great conversation now, but even like answering the phone or like calling customer support, I mean, that just like drives me crazy. When I have to call USPS or UPS, I mean, it's the last thing I want to do. I just want someone to chat with on a live chat and be very easily accessible and quick. And I know other customers feel a different way about that, but I think, as time goes on, and again, as technology is changing, I think people just are kind of losing that personal connection, or the importance of having that, actual physical phone call isn't as important, because if you can get the same information super quickly just by having a personal connection via chat or via an email, it's just as good, and it's almost faster, and they don't have to go find their phone and dial the number and wait for someone to pick it up and all of that. So again, I think it's finding that balance of, like you said, like being super human still, but elevating technology to a point where you can still make it as efficient as possible.
Yes. And, as a consumer of same, like Amazon Prime all day or anything, but as a consumer, I feel like I do feel, what's the word I'm looking for? I think I feel valued even as an online consumer when I can easily find the answer myself. And so you mentioned about people calling you for the dress thing. It's like, okay, where's the disconnect on my site or whatever it is? Like, you are interested in learning that information. So if I can easily find something, like if a website is so informative that I'm just like, yes, here's every answer to all of my questions, I still feel valued even though I didn't have a touch point with, a customer service rep.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, exactly. If the site already makes you feel like all of your questions have been answered, I mean, that's the most magical feeling in the world.
Yeah, that's okay. I could talk to you all day. I've already run over the time that I said I would have you on, and I'm sorry. I always do that, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't respect your time.
No, I love it, and I can talk about this all day, and especially love talking to other wedding professionals, because I think we all need to band together and talk about what works for everyone.
We do. I can agree more. I appreciate you so much, Brittany. Thank you very much for coming on the show and just sharing literally everything. I appreciate how open you were today.
Of course. Thank you so much. And look forward to talking again in the future.
Me too. All right. Good night.
Bye.
Wasn't that interview amazing? Brittany is so real about her journey. I couldn't stop asking her questions. I would love to have her back on and just talk to her for another hour. It was really incredible to hear her journey and how far she's come. And I mean, I said at the beginning of the show, it's shocking that she's doing all of that alone. Her business is incredible. So Brittany, if you're listening, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And you know what? Thank you for checking on me when I took that hiatus. Brittany is one of the people that said, hey, are you okay? Because I hadn't published anything. And it wasn't, hey, can you publish my episode? It was just, hey, are you doing okay as a human? And I just appreciated that so much. So Brittany, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, as promised at the beginning of the show, I'm going to answer 3 random questions from my Table Topics Cube for you. And I'm really looking forward to this part of the show, this sort of, I don't know what they call it. I should know because I love podcasting, but kind of this, what is it, you guys? Like this spot of the podcast episode? I don't know what I'm saying. Never mind. Okay. Question number 1 from Table Topics Original is, what 3 adjectives would your family use to describe you? Wow. Adjectives that my family would use to describe me. Loud is one of them, I'm sure. Loyal, I would say. I think my family would definitely call me loud, loyal. I don't know why these are all starting with an L. I better think of another one that starts with an L. Just kidding. Loud, loyal, and funny? Is that an adjective? I don't know. Funny? I'm like a joker. I love to joke around. I'm pretty, I have a pretty kind of crass sense of humor, and I'm pretty blunt. So yeah, probably blunt, loyal, and loud. Ooh, I don't know if those are good or bad. I think loyal is good, but okay. Second question here. If you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do with your life? Oh. I'm actually kind of happy to say that I would be doing a few things the same. I would definitely still be podcasting because I love it. I would probably take more vacations that had to do with history. Like, I've always wanted to do a tour of the East Coast of all of the Civil War battlefields and stuff because I love history. And I would probably do like a bookshop, like an independent bookstore tour of the US and go to Scotland. So vacation, apparently, and with my family, of course. But I'd definitely still be podcasting. And I do love the wedding venue, so I'd probably do that too, just not every weekend. So that's what I would be doing if I didn't have to worry about money. Okay. Third and final question for today's episode. What one goal do you hope to accomplish this year? Oh my goodness. The year's almost over. We only have about 5 months left. So in 2018, the one goal I want to accomplish is I really want to spend quality time after wedding season is over for us, which is at the end of October. I really want to spend a lot of quality time. I have 2 goals actually. So I want to spend a lot of quality time with my husband and my sons. I really want to be intentional and just very, very, I don't know what the word is. I want to be super intentional about our fall time together because the summer went by in a blur. And I guess along those lines is my oldest, Liam, is going to kindergarten actually in a couple of days, which I'm inside freaking out about. But on the outside, I really want to be a organized, happy, intentional school mom. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I have a lot of big feelings about Liam going to kindergarten actually, but I'm really looking forward to sending him off. And I really want to be a mom that is excited about it and helps him know the value of school and helps him understand that he's super lucky to go to school and just hope that he enjoys it. I want him to be happy and enjoy school. So those are kind of my top 2 goals for the rest of the year. I have other ones, but those are what I could think of in those questions. Those are fun. You guys, that was fun. It's fun to answer questions off the top of your head. I'm sorry that I stuttered a little bit. Really looking forward to asking random questions to the next few guests on this podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. Oh my gosh, it is so exciting to be back with you. Cannot wait to see you next Tuesday for the latest episode of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Until then, have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we will see you here next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.